Hello, sisters. Welcome to the Sacred Medicine Podcast, weaving powerful, soulful practices into functional medicine. Step into this beautiful space of devotion and explore everything from nurturing foods, rituals, sexuality, and awakening your innate sensuality. It is time to own your radiance. This is the Sacred Medicine Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Sacred Medicine Podcast. I am your host, Margaret Romero, and today's guest is Veronica Grant. Veronica is a dating mindset coach and host of Date Yourself Radio. She helps smart, savvy women attract the right relationship. On the surface, Veronica helps women enjoy the process of dating and meet higher quality men. But what she really loves to do is teach women how to treat themselves the way they want to be treated. This was such an amazing conversation because so many questions that I had personally as a single woman were answered. And so we really dive deep into some of the red flags in dating, which I think are really super important. What to do if the guy just texts endlessly and how to avoid one-date wonders. I know we've all been there. And how to end a dead-end relationship and how to sort of detox him out of your life. Also, why you may not be successful in love, but are such a badass in business. So there's so much that we covered. I hope you enjoy it. On to the show. Thank you so much, Veronica, for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
So let me just jump right in.
Okay.
Because I've been dying to talk to you. So you teach women how to sort of date themselves in order to be able to attract the right partner. And tell me what do you do? What do you tell them to do? What steps should they take? Let's start there.
Okay. So, yeah. So let's say someone, I'm guiding someone to date themselves, perhaps because they're just really bitter and jaded with dating, or nothing seems to be working, or they keep getting ghosted. So coming from that perspective. So what dating yourself does is, it does a couple of things. So with every relationship, whether we're talking about a romantic partnership or even friendships, family relationships, coworkers, things like that, people treat you how you treat yourself. You actually teach people how you want to be treated. Mm-hmm. And so, if you've got this inner mean girl in your mind telling you that you're not good enough for him, or you're too fat for him, or you're not smart enough, or whatever it is, then in a subconscious way, you are kind of transmitting those beliefs onto him or the other person, and they kind of reflect those beliefs back at you, and that's how you get treated. So when you date yourself, in some ways it sounds exactly like what it is. It's literally just doing things for yourself that you would want a partner to do for you. So things like buying yourself flowers, writing yourself a love note, cooking yourself a romantic dinner with the candlelight and all that kind of stuff, but no TV or Netflix or anything like that. Even taking yourself out for a drink or something like, just like a casual date. So that's one part of it. And the other part is once, we get to that, do that kind of stuff, then we really start to go in the deeper level. And dating yourself can be really, in some ways, interchangeable with the word self-care practice. So just doing things for yourself, by yourself, to really make you feel how you want to feel in your ideal life and in your ideal relationship. So it's going to look different for everyone. There's no set, we'll start with meditation and then do journaling and then do tapping, or what. It's not like that. It's really what, how you want to feel and what will make you feel that way. So if you want to feel calm and relaxed and taking a walk in nature helps you feel like that, then that's what you do. If journaling or an art project helps you to feel more feminine or more calm, then that's what you do. So that's the other side of dating yourself. And it does and it's in addition to teaching people how you want to be treated, I think the other really big thing that it does is a lot of times when we are in these patterns of attracting emotionally unavailable men or men who have some sort of an addiction or codependent relationships, anything like that, then we don't know what it feels like to be in the relationship that we want. And when you don't know what it feels like, sometimes it can be hard to know when it's happening and when it's not. So a lot of times women will say, well, I met the most amazing guy and it was like head over heels. It was so intense. And then like, before you know it, like the relationship is already falling apart. And that's just simply like, to me, that's a red flag for a codependent relationship, because you're making each other feel ways that you don't have the capacity to make yourself feel that way. So my, going back to the point where, or how that relates to the point where if you, don't know how it feels like to be in the relationship that you want, then it's really hard to know when something is like this really intense, but probably a codependent relationship. Or a lot of times we just kind of settle or just think, okay, well, this kind of sucks, but I guess this is how relationships are just supposed to be, because I know they're not like Hollywood or what Hollywood says or anything like that. So if you can date yourself and treat yourself how you want to be treated and make yourself feel the way you want to feel, then when you're out there dating, you know what that feels like. You're much more familiar with it. And so you can easily be like, okay, this guy might, this could have some potential there. Like this guy seems like he could, make me feel how I want to feel in our relationship. This guy, on the other hand, like lots of red flags. And then you can just more confidently walk away from that relationship rather than wasting your time, like wondering like, well, is it just me or am I just being too picky? And it just helps you to honestly save more time and energy and emotion on the guys who will potentially, provide the relationship that you truly want.
Okay, I love this because, one of the things that being a single woman that I also do is making time with my girlfriends. And a lot of the things that you mentioned, like I totally get. I do a lot of these things. I buy myself flowers every week. If I'm having dinner at home, if I'm alone, I definitely, the candles are there. The TV is off. I will, even if I have nothing to do, or if I'm like when I first moved to this particular town I live in now, I would go out and I would have dinner by myself or sit at the bar and have a drink and just talk to whoever sat next to me. Just being social rather than staying home and like, oh, this sucks. But what do you think about, getting a girlfriend and doing things like a spa day or like weekend trips, vacations with your girlfriends? I think that has definitely worked for me. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is really important, but I wouldn't call that necessarily dating yourself. So, when I work with clients, the first thing we do is to get really clear on how they want to feel in their ideal relationship so they can date themselves and make themselves feel that way. And then the second thing we do is like, okay, well, let's look at all the areas of your life and see which areas are most important. We come to usually between 5 to 7 areas. So sometimes, usually a romantic relationship is one of either a big goal or important area of their life, usually something like career, usually health, something like that. And then usually like family, maybe friendships, or put all non-romantic relationships in the same category. And so so I would put, doing things with your friends like that into more of like that category of building your full life. Because one thing I talk about when I'm talking about, is it a healthy relationship versus a dependent or codependent relationship, is I have my clients imagine, is your relationship a puzzle piece or 2 circles together in a Venn diagram? So you can imagine 2 puzzle pieces together. There's basically like the female part of the puzzle and the male part of the puzzle, and they fit together, right? And a lot of times we think about relationships, and that's certainly how Hollywood thinks about or talks about relationships, like, oh, you complete me or whatever.
Right.
But the problem with that is you're completely dependent on this other person to feel happy or to feel confident or to feel secure or to feel loved even. And it could be a one-way street or it could be a two-way street in that type of situation. But those are relationships that are very quickly, or not, maybe not so quickly, but could definitely lead to a toxic feeling relationship, or a relationship where you feel like you're walking on eggshells all the time, and it's not truly going to be the fulfilling relationship that I think most women want. Whereas two circles coming together, it's like two complete whole beings who have this full life for themselves.
Right.
So they've got 5 to 7 areas completely fulfilled. And obviously we're always growing, and, we're always, that kind of stuff. So it's not like we're ever going to be perfect and then we can go date. It's not like that, but like that's, the energy of, where our emotional and mental space is. And then the two circles merge together. So each relationship has, 3 parts. There's, to the two people, and then the team in the middle, and that's the relationship. And so, I think having strong friendships and community and other types of relationship are super important, because I think one trap that a lot of women fall into, and I am totally guilty of this, is expecting or assuming that my partner can fulfill all of my emotional needs, spiritual needs, intellectual needs, which just isn't fair to put that on anybody. And so, and again, that can kind of lead to that puzzle piece type of situation or relationship versus, having a diverse set of relationships that fulfill you in different ways. And what's funny is, so I'm engaged to my partner, and the more I spend time with either my colleagues or friendships, or even just spending time at the yoga studio and that I go to and talking to people that I don't even know that well, it always enhances my relationship with Stevie. Rather than just like feeling I have to spend all my time and energy and attention on him. So that was a long way to answer your question, but I hope that I hope it did.
No, that I love that answer. And so you were talking about red flags before. You mentioned some red flags. What are some red flags that, once you see them, like, okay, time to move on, because this guy is just not it?
Yeah. So there's 2 answers to this. So the first answer is it's really hard to come up with a really set list of red flags, because different people want different things. But I think generally, for me, the biggest red flag, especially if you're trying to avoid those dependent, codependent, unhealthy relationships, is if someone is just like really into you and they hardly know you. To me, that's a red flag. Now, and I don't want to be like the Debbie Downer and like not believing in love at first sight, because I felt like Stevie and I definitely just had a spark when we first met, but it wasn't like, I don't know, it's just such a subtle difference. Like he wasn't like in love with me and like obsessed and we spent all of our time together. Like it wasn't like that. It was just like we had this really intense connection, and we kept dating, and then we got to where we are. But if someone is just like really just
Obsessed.
One of those relationships, obsessed, that's the right word that I'm looking for, then to me that's a huge red flag that I would say I would say that would be almost universal. And I think that will lead to a bunch of other red flags that usually women are frustrated with, like dating men that are have addiction, whether it's alcohol or food or sex or women or something else, that could also lead to or be a precursor to just him simply being emotionally unavailable. So that's like the big one. That's probably the most universal.
And so I think that, though, if someone were to be slightly obsessed, let's say and a woman's experiencing this, it could feel really good to get all of that attention. And
that's why it works. It's hard.
They will want to see you all the time. They will send flowers to your office or to wherever you work. They will make the reservations, book that trip, take you away on weekends, like, slightly move in with you, or have you like leave some of your stuff at his place. And it could be very addicting to feel that and to be like, oh my God, this is amazing. I can't believe it. Can you
Yeah.
believe this guy that he's doing all of these great
Yeah.
things? And then, and so how does a woman rationally think about this and rather than being swept off? Because I think it's really easy to be swept off your feet, especially if you haven't maybe dated in a while or found someone that put in so much effort, right? So all of a sudden you're like being swept off, and it's really hard to stay like what's the word I'm looking for? It's really hard to stay grounded and be like, oh
Yeah.
wait, no, hold on, chill. This guy is like a little bit too much.
Right.
What do you do? How do you?
So
Yeah.
yeah, there's a couple things. So, the first thing is awareness is the first step, and just being aware of that being a pattern for you. Then I think that helps. Now that could also go a little bit too strong and cause you to become guarded and shut down. But this is really goes back to dating yourself, because let's say this person, with him treating you like this makes you just feel like really confident, and you just don't have that level of confidence that you're able to create for yourself. Then yeah, of course it's going to be very addictive, and you're going to want it. It's literally like a rush of dopamine to your brain.
Yes.
So like on the
Yeah.
biochemical level. And sometimes when you're in that type of situation, there's almost nothing you can do. I actually recently had a client. To me, it was glaring, like this type of situation. And I even asked her, I was like, do you really think that he likes you? How safe and secure do you feel with him? And those are two questions I asked. And she was like totally, totally for it. And then of course, a few days later, he did end up, breaking up with her. And I think he was with another woman or something like that. I'm not sure the situation. So sometimes, if without having that third party, like how I was for my client, even then I didn't want to like tell her, because that's not really my job as a coach, but asking her some leading questions, even then, it's really hard. But this is where dating yourself becomes really, really important, because if you're able to make yourself feel confident on your own, then when someone's acting like that, it's just comes off as icky and gross.
Right.
Like before Stevie and I were engaged, before I had an engagement ring on, it's funny because we go we're both Jewish, and we go to like Jewish social events a lot, and talk about this sometimes, but those are basically just breeding grounds for people to meet each other and create more Jewish babies. So there's a lot of hitting on.
Okay.
And so I would always get hit on, and a lot of times it was like these types of guys in these situations. And honestly, myself 5 or 6 years ago would have fallen for it for sure, because I didn't have the level of confidence that I had by the time I met Stevie. But now it's just, well, first of all, I'm like taken, but it's also just kind of like, oh, this is so icky, and it just feels gross to me. Like, it's so clear what you're doing to me. But I only am able to detect that because I am so clear on how I want to feel in my life and in my relationship that I don't need anyone else to, give me that shot of dopamine, so to speak.
Right. So going back to that red flag that you were talking about, I think what makes it even harder is, let's say you have sex with him pretty early on, and then you get that oxytocin, which is binding you to him even more now. So, and a lot of women do not have dating coaches. I mean, in Manhattan alone, I would love for more women to have dating coaches, so they sort of know, like, should I go for it with this guy, or how should I approach this,
Yeah.
or he said that or this. So what what happens when you have women who, I mean, ultimately what ends up happening is they get crushed, right? Because those red flags that are being sent by, the red flags, and then these guys that aren't, what are they, narcissists, or what is the end result that we're trying to avoid happening?
So it could be all sorts of things. I mean, they could be narcissists. They could have addictive qualities in their personality. And it could also just be simply they don't have confidence either. And so it makes them feel more secure in themselves when they think someone is attached to them. So it could be a lot of things. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Now,
Yeah.
I mean, this now with like Tinder and Bumble and all these dating sites, these apps,
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people who are like, I need to get like 3 or 4 dates in a week. They're slightly miserable because it's like one date after another, and the guy, whatever horror story, ends up at the end of the night. From what I've been hearing recently, and also through my own experience as well as being a single woman, how do you stay? How do women sort of find it all pleasurable rather than like, oh my God, I have another date tonight, and then if it doesn't work out, or the guy just doesn't, you think the date went well, and then you never hear from him. How do you sort of keep a positive attitude, like date after date after date?
Yeah. So you bring on a lot of things, and the first thing I'm going to say, because I know some people just sworn off online dating. I think online dating is a great tool, especially for women who are really busy, have a lot going on in their careers and jobs. So I just wanted to plug that in, and no one's paying me to say that. I just think online dating is a great resource. But of course, the dark side is that it's so easy to get dates, and you can just swipe and swipe and swipe, or scroll and scroll and scroll, and message enough people, and in some ways it's just a numbers game. But there's a few things. And so what I call this is the dating all or none, where you are constantly scrolling on Tinder, like even just kind of passively doing it while you're in line at Starbucks or in the grocery store, or you're almost make a game out of it, like how many dates can I get this week or in the next couple of weeks, or whatever it is. But the thing is that all of that stuff takes up time, right? Like scrolling and messaging and the endless texting and the dates. It takes up a lot of time, and a lot of us, don't have that kind of time, but except we still tend to spend it on dating. But going back to that idea where I was talking about the 5 to 7 most important areas of your life, if you're spending that much time on dating, there is a very high chance that it's impeding on other parts that are important to you, whether it's friendships or your health or your self-care or your business goals or your career goals or whatever other areas, maybe spirituality or community, whatever it is. Right. So when I'm working with clients, I help them to create like a sacred area or time for that's set aside for dating. And it doesn't have to be the same, day or anything like that, but I call it your ideal self-care calendar. And it's just about piecing together all of these areas of your life that are important so that you can really spend some time, dating or being online, meeting people, and be intentional about that. And then when you're at the gym, or when you are, I don't know, training for your marathon, or working or hanging out with your friends, or spending time in your, religious community or whatever, then you can really spend time in that and not feel like, oh, I'm not dating, or when you're dating, you're like, oh, I'm not, taking care of myself. And it can work better in a balance, because what happens when you're in this all or none, you go on these dates all the time, maybe up to 3 or 4 or possibly even more a week, and you're not spending time on the other areas of your life, as I already said. But what that really does is it makes you, and I don't want this to come across in the wrong way, but it actually makes you a less interesting date, because you don't have the other areas of your life that really do make you a cool and unique and interesting person.
Right.
But instead you're just focusing all on dating, and you're not doing the other things in your life that make you or help you to be you. And so then these dates just don't go anywhere, and you're probably also exhausted. You're probably also a little bitter and jaded. And when you're in that type of state, it's almost impossible to be connecting with someone in an authentic way.
That's true. I totally see that.
And yeah, and so what I think is better is having less dates, but higher quality dates. And I truly believe you can have higher quality dates when you are actually spending some time away from dating and not doing it so much. Like imagine how much more selective you would be, or what you would do differently if you were like, I'm only going to have one date a week rather than trying to cram in all of these dates. Like, what different questions would you be asking the guys? What would you want to know first before meeting them? Would you want to maybe even have a quick phone conversation just to see if there's a spark on the phone before meeting them? Or even I've heard even some people doing Skype. What would you do differently to make that time more intentional so that you can fully show up present? And whether or not the date goes anywhere, just make it your intention to have that a nice, authentic, intentional time together. And I think that is going to be the best way to just see if there is a potential. It's not like foolproof. It's not like you do that the first time and all of a sudden it's like fireworks and the one or anything, although it certainly could be. But I think it'll give you the best chance to see if there truly is a connection there.
Okay. Now, when you say set aside time, do you mean like, okay, on in the evening, I don't know, 8 o'clock to 8:30, I'm just going to do my app. Is that what you mean? Like set aside time of like, okay, you know what? I'm not going to do it during the workday. I'm not doing it when I'm out with my girlfriends. I'm just going to do it, I don't know, on the commute to work in the morning from at around 8 o'clock.
Yeah. I think that's the best way to do it, because I think there has to be boundaries around it, because otherwise first it just turns into like another form of Facebook, which just can be a time and energy suck.
Right.
And also what it does is it helps to humanize the experience a little bit, because the way that Tinder and all those swiping apps, and again, I think swiping apps are good. I don't dislike them over, other types of dating sites. But they can be gamified a little bit more. And so when you're just kind of doing it all the time, it's just more about the dopamine hit rather than like, is this person like someone that's attractive to me? And when you really set that time to just to kind of see what you think or how you feel about it as you're scrolling, I think again, you'll get higher quality matches that way.
And do you think that people should be connecting over the phone or Skype before meeting in person?
I think it's a good idea. I don't think it's required. It really, one thing I say is the only rule in dating is that there are no rules. You got to do you and what feels good for you. I think if you're going on a lot of dates that just simply aren't going anywhere and it's just, you feel like it's sucking your time and energy, then I think just chatting on the phone once or twice, 10 or 15 minutes max before meeting could save you a lot of time. And it gives you a sense of the person, I think. So I definitely think it's a good idea, especially if you feel like you're spending a lot of time on dates.
Yeah, I agree. I will not meet someone unless I actually speak to them on the phone. And hey, if I get to FaceTime with them, even better, because, getting ready to go on a date, putting it in your schedule, which could be very full, or if you're an entrepreneur or you work a lot or whatever, it takes a lot of time to get dressed, go commute there, drive, subway, whatever it is, cab it there, meet them. And then if it's like a total bust, you're like, oh my God, I could have totally been, I don't know, doing something else. So I personally am someone that's like, we need to talk on the phone. And then, and if we can't meet, like, let's say both of our schedules don't match and I can't meet for like a week, then I will, I'm open to a FaceTime, or don't do Skype. I'll just FaceTime with them.
That's right. Yeah.
And if that much time, but what do you think about, let's say there's a nice connection on the phone and then you FaceTime, or now you're talking on the phone a lot, but you haven't met and a couple weeks have passed. Or he's not really saying, let's do something, and it's been either phone or text, and that's it. What suggestions do you have?
Yeah. So, as much as possible, I would avoid these get in or get out is kind of my philosophy with this. I have clients who have been messaging, like it's just like this texting game, just endless. And it's like we
Right.
text every day, but we've never met. I'm like, what are you doing? Texting and the real world are like the two world. The texting world and the real world is like the two worlds that we have. And texting is just people can be whoever they want to be, and it's also again like I had a dopamine to get like a little notification that you have a text. It almost doesn't even matter who it's from. And I think that's what drives a lot of this just endless texting. So if the guy's not making a move, I would just ask. I would, be straightforward about what it is that you want, and that might be you want him to take you on a date. And you can even say, like, if a lot of women say, well, I want it to be I'm old fashioned or like chivalry, blah blah blah. Like, okay, well, ask him to take you on a date. Because that works pretty well, and that's actually how I had my first few dates with TV. I made a lot of the first moves in that relationship. But then from there, I think you'll get your answer. If he's he might just be shy and scared of rejection, and that might be why he's not making a move, and you kind of throw him a bone. He might take it and run with it and take it on a date, and it goes really well. Or he might just be non-committal and like, well, yeah, blah, blah, whatever he's saying. Right. Well, then you've got your answer again. So either way, you'll know what to do if you just make the move and throw him a little bone there.
Yeah, I mean the text could be endless, and that's like like I agree. Get in or get out. That's it. And it's I tend to be someone that is a little I don't like to use this word sometimes, alpha. And so I tend to be the one that's sort of fearless. I'll go up to anybody and talk to them. And I would definitely be the one that's like, well, I'd love to meet you. I'd probably early on if it wasn't happening fast enough for me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yet I've also hear coaches who are like, no, you're the woman. You should really be not aggressive. The man is the one that should be the one asking. The man should be the one, you should be sort of laying back and kind of waiting. And what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I have to definitely disagree with that. And I think, I've actually spoken with someone in my community pretty similar to this topic. And I think there's a misunderstanding of what masculine and feminine versus male, female roles are.
Right.
And, so I talked to this one woman in my community, and she just said, well, she had worked with a dating coach before, and the dating coach said she needs to be more feminine. So she made no move. She not even throwing him a bone or any type of hint that she was interested. And she just was very passive and waited, only would not ask anyone out, wouldn't ask anyone for a second date or numbers or anything like that. And she had a bunch of what I call one date wonders. And it's kind of like, well, no kidding. Even if you're not going to ask the person out, just, throwing that bone is so important, I think, in giving the man the confidence, because we think that sometimes that women are the only humans in this situation, but men are there too, and they're humans, and they're just as scared of rejection as you are.
Right.
So I think throwing that bone is really helpful. But, making a move and, asking for what you want or what you believe or what you think, there's that's not about not being a woman or not being feminine or, the feminine masculine energy are totally different things. And the thing is that we all need both, men and women need both sets of those types of energies. So it's not masculine energy is only for men and feminine energy is only for women. But a lot of times I hear, dating coaches, from, the clients that my clients at other coaches, that they worked with other coaches, just completely conflate the two. And I just think it's a shame, because so many of the women in my community, I have this Facebook group, and so many of them will not make a move. And I just think it's really too bad. I saw what I wanted and I went after it, and now I got it.
Well, listen, that's what I'm all about as well. But I guess I think that being okay. Well, okay. Let me backtrack here.
Okay.
How soon after you start talking to someone or on a date, or sorry, on the phone and talking, and he's not really saying anything about meeting? How soon? Like after you talk to him like twice, or after like 2 weeks go by, can you say something? Like how soon? Because personally, for me, I would probably after the first call say, "Hey, well, I'd love to meet."
Yeah. I think 1 call, 2 calls max before, having plans to meet. And in terms of like time between when you first start talking on the site or the app to calling, I don't know. I wouldn't do more than a week. Anything more than that, then I just feel like it's just like this ulterior world that he just wants to live in and has no interest in bringing people in his ulterior world into his real world, if that makes sense. So a week or so max, just messaging. And if it's going really well, I would, I hesitate to give exact timelines or, talk twice or do this because I think everyone is different. I didn't meet Stevie online, but I was doing a lot of online dating when we met. And for me, I think I was really not interested in messaging people more than for a few days. And I actually, with those people, I didn't do a lot of phone calls. I met with them. A couple I did, but I probably should have done phone calls with all of them. I probably would have had less dates, which would have been better. But I think the whole time from, meeting or first communicating to 1 or 2 phone calls to your first date, that whole thing shouldn't be more than, max 2 weeks if you're including some phone calls in there. And I get sometimes schedules are busy, and that's kind of the reason why it might take a little time, and that's fine. I get that. But it should be moving towards meeting as soon as possible. And if there's no movement towards that, then it's either make a move or just let it go, because otherwise you're just wasting your time.
And how do you say it? How do you approach it? How do you what's the dialogue there to bringing that up if he's kind of not making a move and you're like, what the hell's going on? How are you approaching that? How are you?
I would say something like, hey, this is really fun. I would love to actually meet in person or talk on the phone about this. I'm not, it's hard for me to keep up with texting. You can even say something like that. Or just like, hey, it's been really fun getting to know you. I would love for you to take me on a date, winky face. So that it's like flirty, it could be flirty, and you're allowing him still to take the lead, which might be what he wants to do. You could just say, maybe like tell him your favorite bar or coffee shop and like, hey, let's go there. You should try the whatever is their favorite drink, or just, it can just be really creative ways on like what you're already talking about. And like, hey, let's bring this into, face to face or on the phone.
Okay. That's good. I like that. Okay. So I think a lot of the women that may come to you may be seeking some help because they are, let's say, successful. They maybe run a company. They make buku dollars. Maybe they have like a vacation home. They travel a bunch. They really like have it made. But the one thing that is missing is a relationship. And so why is it that there are some women who can strive so strongly in some other huge areas of their lives, yet the relationship part is what's lacking? I see this so much, and I guess I want to know, is this a common theme that you see? And if so, where do you start with them? And what do you think are some of the blocks that may be contributing to this?
So yes, this is very common. So if anyone listening to this can relate to that, you're not alone. You're not weird. You're not doing anything wrong or anything like that. So, there's quite a few reasons, and obviously it's going to depend on the person. But the big thing, especially for women who are successful in their careers, but not so far in their love life, is a lot of times they're using the same skills that got them success in their career in dating and relationships. And the problem is that it just doesn't work like that. And there's a few reasons why it doesn't work like that. So the first thing is kind of like the scenario that opens up like so many Hollywood movies. You see like the successful businessman, he has an amazing apartment and maybe even has a family. But like the whole theme of this movie is he's trying to find his purpose, right? Like, is this it? Like, so it's kind of a very similar thing that happens in dating and relationships. So, and one specific example with this is the idea of perfect manless. So when you have a career, you have some goals, and maybe you want this type of job, or work in this company, or have a team, or have a certain salary. And so they're all very measurable goals, right? That add up to this big goal. But when we get into dating and relationships, a lot of times we have perfect man lists. Like we want someone who has this career or makes this much money, or this political belief, or this religion, or this height or weight, or whatever it is.
Right.
And the same thing happens that we find this perfect man, except maybe we even date this person, and maybe we're even in the relationship with this person, and we get in, it's the same type of situation. It's like, oh, is this it? Like, why don't I feel fulfilled? And that's because we are a lot of times basing what we want and what we consider success on these external things. So these superficial ideas, like, you're just like how in your career, you might have goals around salary or specific job or company, whereas in relationships, you might have a goal around what your perfect man looks like. And so we meet those men, and then they're not fulfilling. So I think that's one big thing. The other thing that I find is, especially women who do have a lot, really anybody, but women, as we're talking in this show, have a lot of success in their career. They have that success because they're very smart. They like to think. They're very analytical, very intellectual, and they love solving problems. And all of that is very masculine. And which is great. Like I said earlier, everyone needs both a balance of feminine and masculine energy. And living in the world we live in today, which is very success, goal oriented, and achievement oriented, that is, and doing oriented, like, crossing off things on the to-do list, like that is very highly regarded in our society. But the thing is that both, again, like I said, both men and women and each relationship needs a balance of feminine and masculine. And I think a lot of times these smart, successful women have a hard time leaning into the more feminine side of themselves, which is like their energy of being in flow, energy of intuition, energy of feeling and emotions and vulnerability. And without that, it's really hard to be in a deep, fulfilling relationship. And so it's not working. And so what do? We even lean more into the masculine side to kind of analyze it and try to fix it.
Yes.
And try to, again, like just like do things to make it better, but it's not working because our personal lives and our professional lives are completely separate, that require completely separate skill sets and tools to succeed in.
Got it. Yeah, I so resonate with that big time. And I can see how women are like, wait a minute, this is just how it should be done. And these are the steps that I took to build this career. And now this should be the steps that I have to take to manifest this man, when in actuality, it's a completely different approach. So
yeah. Let me just add one other thing that I think also comes up, especially for women who are in very competitive careers, like lawyers who are racing for partner, or even doctors where it can be really competitive, Or I mean, I guess any, big corporate company can feel competitive in terms of like getting to the next level and the next, only so many promotions or raises. It can affect your feelings of worthiness. Because maybe you think you're not good enough to get the raise, someone else is going to get it.
Right.
For whatever reason you tell yourself, well, if you tell yourself that you're not worthy and you're not good enough in one area of your life for long enough, like it's almost impossible for it to not spill over into the other areas of your life, including your romantic relationships. So there might be either a conscious or a subconscious part telling you that you're not good enough for the relationship that you want, or a particular guy or crush that you have on at the time. You might, believe that you're not good enough for him, and then perhaps sabotage those prospects.
And how do you advise women who are, and this is one of the reasons why I created this podcast to begin with, when women are so deeply rooted in their masculine, and of course they're very successful for it, yet it's it not only affects your health, creating hormonal imbalances and adrenal burnout and things like that, but it also affects even current relationships that they may be in with their current partners. But also we're seeing it in the dating scene as well. So how do you guide women to kind of step out of that masculine, embrace that feminine, to really attract the partner that they really want?
Yeah, so two different answers. So the first thing is just generally for your life is to create some time that's some doing time and some time that's being time. So, and by the way, like this woman that we're talking about, this career successful oriented woman, like that was totally me, and it still is me in some ways. I've just learned to work with it in a more effective way. So it's not like, there's a place or destination to be, and that's like where all, fireworks happen. I just wanted to point that out. But to create a doing schedule and a being schedule. So, one thing that I know is really hard for a lot of people is, if there's like a free hour, free afternoon on a Saturday or Sunday, we just feel like we have to fill it with, even if it's just like going to the gym, it's still like accomplishing something.
Yes, guilty.
Yeah. So, and I think in some ways we all are. So, a being schedule is actually purposely not doing things that are on your to-do list. So just doing things simply for the sake of doing them. So that definitely would not be the gym. So a lot of times I ask women, especially when they start working with me, like, so how are you taking care of yourself? What's your self-care? Well, I go to the gym. Like, no, that's not self-care. Like, it's important. And it's nice that I love that you work out. I don't want to
Right.
to stomp on that, but
Right.
we're talking about something different here. So your being schedule can be things like dating yourself. You're literally just doing something for the sake of doing it. And it could be the things that I outlined earlier that are the more like things you would want your partner to do for you, or it can be the more the inner deeper work like journaling or meditating or whatever. But the idea of this time is that it's like listening to a piece of music. Like, you don't listen to music for it to be over. You just listen to it to experience, the time that you're listening to it. And that's what your being schedule is. And so I strongly recommend at least like 30 minutes of that time in the mornings, and then 30 minutes to an hour or so of that time in the evenings before you go to bed really, really helps to just kind of soften around the edges a little bit, and it honestly it's going to improve the more masculine areas of your life, like, working and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's just going to make you a more receptive person when you are dating. Now, one thing that I think is really, really effective to be more quote unquote feminine when you're actually on a date with someone is and this, I drew this from, I don't know if your audience is familiar with Alison Armstrong.
Yes.
And her book, The Queen's Code. I highly recommend that book. It should be required reading for everyone, I think. But anyways, one thing she talks about is men being the providers. And when I first read that, I was like, my feminist like sirens went off, and I was like, no freaking way. Like, a man is not a provider. But what I learned is that she's not talking about it being financial. I mean, it could be that, but that's not like necessarily what it means. And what it means is, if we're talking about masculine and feminine energy, masculine energy is like the container, and the feminine energy is the space in the container. So it's kind of like a balloon. Like, you have the actual balloon is the masculine energy, it's the structure, and then the air inside is just kind of flowing, but within the boundaries of the balloon is more feminine side. So it's what the balloon is doing is that it's providing a space for the energy to flow inside, which is the air. So how can you do that on your date? Well, I think a really good place is to ask the man to provide you something. And that's why I said, when you're trying to get someone to ask you out on a date that you're talking online, to ask him to provide for you a date or to take you on a date, it's still allowing him to fill that masculine space of providing you the experience of the date.
Right.
But, you're obviously giving him a nudge there. So that's one thing that you could do, but also providing like his opinion on something. Like, I don't know, maybe you heard something on the news or something happened at work and you just want his opinion on it. And it's just, he's simply providing that for you. Or perhaps like even advice or his 2 cents or even his thoughts, or anything that allows him just to provide something for you that allows you to just kind of move into that space within the parameters that he's essentially creating by doing that. Does that make sense?
Yes. So you're giving a request. You're not actually doing anything. You're saying, oh my God, did you hear about that new restaurant that opened up? I would love to go there. And are you asking like, let's go? Can we go to that and then have him make the reservation? You mean like that kind of thing?
I would say I would love it if you could take me there. It's like my favorite restaurant or something like that. Yeah, that's what I would do.
And now, and are you, so that's a woman asking and then the man is giving. And so you're saying that women more in their masculine would say something like, oh, I heard there was a new restaurant opening up. How about I'll make the res for next Friday, and let's go there.
Yeah. So
that's the masculine approach, right?
That's the masculine approach. And you see how saying that the guy could be like, well, where's my place in this? Like, what is my role?
Right. Right. But kind of making a request and then letting him do part 2.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, oh my God, our time is already coming to a close very, very soon. Is there anything that you, anything on the topic of dating or anything that you wanted to just leave our listeners with? Any last points or pointers?
Yeah. So, and I kind of mentioned this earlier, but I just want to, I think this is a good way to wrap up. So, all of the questions that I get from women who listen to my podcast or on my email list or anything like that, they always send me questions like, whatever the situation, like this happened and this happened, like, what should I do? Or I'm kind of seeing somebody, but we haven't had the exclusive talk and now there's someone else and I don't know like what I should do. And, basically like there's just never know what to do, no matter what stage they are in dating or the relationship. And they're looking to me to either tell them what the rule is, like how many dates is it until you can have the, the exclusive talk, or how many dates until it's okay to have sex, or, who should do the asking?
Yeah, totally.
Something we've been talking about.
Right.
And, one thing that I just always come back to is that the only rule in dating is that there are no rules. And you really have to turn in and to listen to what your gut and what your intuition is saying. And sometimes it might be that it's okay to have sex on the first date. And sometimes it might be better to wait to the 10th date to have sex. It just totally depends on who you are and the situation and who the guy is and your experience and their experience. I mean, just all sorts of things. And I think a lot of times we look for those rules because it's very much in line with, our more analytical masculine thinking brain, because there might be rules at work. There might be rules or
Right,
things
exactly.
you have to do to become a lawyer, to become a doctor, or to
Exactly.
become all these other things. And so we think we have to pass by all these rules in relationships in order to become boyfriend and girlfriend and then engage. But like that's not how it works at all. It's just a completely different way of thinking and really being. So the more you can just turn in, the better. Obviously, I get it, easier said than done, but that's the work.
Yeah, really listening, because that's also a huge feminine piece, is
Mm-hmm.
really listening to, no, this doesn't really feel right now,
Mm-hmm.
or no, I get a really good feeling about him, or yeah, I'd like to continue seeing him. That's really such a feminine thing, when I think what you're saying is that the masculine energy is like, wait, hold on. 3 dates? Is that the, like, they want specifics?
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Not
Exactly.
really
Like
going.
they're asking me for the play by play. And, one thing that I'm really proud about in my business and the way I coach is I do not teach the play by play. Because it's just like impossible to do
Exactly.
it.
Right. I can
And
imagine.
I know there's other dating coaches that do that, like text this to get to the next date or do this to get him to it just sounds so sleazy to me personally. But I think that when it's kind of like the whole story, like teaching you how to fish or giving you a fish for dinner. It's the same
Right.
thing. It's the same sort of idea.
And I think, there's one more thing I wanted to ask you. And then
Okay.
what about women who sort of hang on too long when that relationship is not going anywhere? They just,
Hmm.
it's like there's nobody else. They're not dating anyone, and they're sort of like just wanting something so bad that they just kind of hang out with the guy that everyone can see is not a good match. So, how
Hmm.
do you help? What do you say to women that are just that just need to be in this, even though it's kind of a fucked up relationship?
Hmm.
How do you tell them to, like, okay, listen, it's time to end it. This guy's a complete idiot. How do you guide them to just make that clean cut and move away and move on?
Yeah. So I have two answers. One is if this person was my friend, and one answer if this person was my client.
Oh, okay.
So my friend, I would probably give them a little bit more straight talk. My client, you know, it's I don't think it's my job as a coach to tell people what to do. I think my job as a coach is to help people figure out what the best steps for them to take are. So with this, so speaking with my coach hat on, I would first ask, like, what are they getting from this relationship? Like, what does that do for them?
Right.
And and then I would actually, like always, turn to dating themselves and try to create whatever they're getting from this relationship to create for themselves. Because I think what's going on is that they feel insecure, that they're not going to be happy, or they're not going to be feeling safe or secure, or they're not going to feel loved if they don't have this person. So my goal is for them to create that for themselves so that they can begin to see evidence that they don't need this person to feel to feel this way. Um, and the other thing I would do is, like, let's say if they were already broken up and like, but it was kind of like not a clean cut. I strongly, strongly push for the ex detox. And so once someone has decided that a relationship isn't right for them, then I will be a little bit more pushy and push them for an ex detox, which is defriending them on Facebook, deleting their phone number, um, doing all of that stuff, like no contact. You don't want them coming through your news feed. You got to clear the energy out of your house. So you got to get rid of anything that belongs to them, or anything that's like very
Mm,
specific, like anything you bought on a trip together or something like that.
right.
Like anything like
Pictures.
that. Yeah, pictures, definitely. It all has to go. And that's just to create the space for healing. Because as long as there is even just him potentially coming across your news feed and like you're not actually in contact, like if that has the potential to trigger you and to send you down a rabbit hole, then you're just not creating space for either yourself or for someone who's someone new. And so, the detox is so important. And then, and this is, a little bit of a longer process, then what I really do with clients is to help them kind of see the lessons from that relationship. And it's super cheesy to say, but I really believe in the power of turning breakups into breakthroughs so that
I love that.
you can attract especially if it's part of a pattern. Especially so if the relationship was toxic, there's a good chance it's part of a pattern. So the more that we can dissect that pattern, become aware of it, so that she doesn't repeat the same mistake, then or attract the same type of guy, then that's what we'll do together. And I will just say this, like, I coach my clients differently just depending on how they're showing up and who they are as a person. And sometimes I've been pretty blatant with clients and like, okay, this guy, like he's gonna ghost you at some point. You can go on this date, but he's gonna ghost you or whatever, because I can just see it. It's like so clear to me, but it's not clear to them. But they still go on the date. And of course they get ghosted, or whatever I said was gonna happen happened. And sometimes, shit has to hit the fan in order for there to be a breakthrough.
Right.
And so that's why it's like this, my coach, that I became a coach with, like she talks about how coaching is really an art and a science, like, but the art of it is like figuring out this balance of like when to just let my client like have shit hit the fan so they can have the breakthrough that I really want them to have, and when I can kind of guide them to the path that they want to be on sooner rather than later. Does that make sense?
Yes. And then briefly, if they were your girlfriend, what would you say?
I would say, gosh, it's funny now. It's actually harder for me to give relationship advice now as a dating coach, because like I just talk about situations so much different, or so much more differently than I did before when I was in this business. But I would probably, let me think about this. What did I say? I would probably have a similar approach where I would try to get them to see that this person, isn't going to give them what they wanted, because
Right.
I would say, like, I would just say something like, well, imagine me, like, what if I was dating this guy and I felt like this much crap? Like, what would you tell to me? And they would usually say something, well, I would tell you to kick him to the curb and you deserve better and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, so that's probably good advice. Why aren't you doing that for yourself? Because even with my friends, like I have to be, and Stevie too, I have to be very cautious to not coach them.
Right.
Because they're not my client, they're my friends. And it's a very different relationship. And also one thing that I've learned, perhaps you could say the hard way, is that giving unsolicited advice, especially when it's advice that someone doesn't want to hear, doesn't usually go well.
Yeah, I can imagine. All right. Well, I have two quick questions. These have not to do with dating at all.
Okay.
What is your biggest indulgence right now? Is it like a food? Is it shoes?
Man, my biggest indulgence is probably probably sushi and wine. It's always my indulgence though.
Oh, okay. Nice.
I just love having good sushi and a good Chardonnay. It's just my thing.
That sounds good. And what is currently at your bedside?
Coconut oil.
Ooh.
Yeah. I've been oiling my feet every night for the past couple months, and it just feels really good. And I don't know if it helps me sleep. I know there's pressure points in your feet, but I just love it.
My mind went somewhere else. And I totally thought you were going to go all sexual on me right then.
Oh, we use it for lube too. Yeah, we do. I actually have an episode on my podcast, like the 26 ways I use coconut oil, because it's just, I use it for everything. Yeah, I make Stevie buy it like in bulk, because I do oil pulling.
You can do everything with
and
it.
Yeah, I do everything. I wash my face with it. I rub coconut oil over my whole body. I just do everything with it, and I cook with it. So
All right. Well, how can we find you? Tell us where you are and tell us a little bit about your podcast as well.
yeah, sure. So people can find me over on Date Yourself Radio, and you can search that on iTunes, Stitcher, and I think we're on like TuneIn Radio, soon to be on YouTube. Um, And my website is veronicagrant.com. And you can go there and you can grab my free download if you want to try dating yourself, but you're not really sure where to start. I have 37 ways you can date yourself. So you can grab that free download at veronicagrant.com. And you can also sign up for a clarity session there if like everything that I said was resonating. You're like, okay, what do I do now? You can get on the phone with me for a half hour and we can see what's blocking you.
I love it. What a fun conversation. I love talking about dating. I love all this stuff. So thank you so much for taking the time today to
my pleasure. Thank you.
Give us a little insight into the dating scene and how to be more empowered and how to date ourselves. So this was really an awesome call. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. And to learn more about Veronica and for all the show notes, you can find it at margaretromero.com/episode 7. Also, for a little behind the scenes in my life, to check out how I live, how I eat, where I go, what I'm doing on a somewhat daily basis, check me out on Instagram at instagram.com/Margaret Romero. And to continue the conversation, you can also join us on Facebook. We have a private Facebook group, which you can find at margaretromero.com/Facebook. And I've also started to post some videos there, which you can only access through the private Facebook group. So join us there, and I'll see you next week.